Welcome to Spoilerin Time, the full experience, where we take a tour through some of the greatest television shows of all time, experiencing the first, the ultimate, the least, and the last episode. And we are finishing up Cheers this week. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Hey, man. So this was a curious venture. First of all, yes, longtime listeners, the name keeps changing, but we're deeply in love with the idea of the full experience, and it may indeed be its own podcast at some point, but that first, ultimate, least, last is so great. In this case, we're watching Cheers, which we had a conflict because the highest rated episode also happened to be the last episode, which also happened to be 3 episodes.
Well, it was originally aired as 1 episode. It's just one of those syndication things where they break it up into 3. Sometimes they do it because it fits a syndication schedule. Sometimes they do it because they want to sell you 3, $1.99 episodes if you're buying it. I don't know. But it's kind of annoying to have to do it that way. I know.
But the important part is that we had a conflict in that the last episode was also the highest rated episode. So we went with the second highest rated episode, which we liked very much. Which one was that?
That was the Dinner at 8-ish, season 5, episode 20.
Oh yeah. That was like classic vaudeville comedy. And we got a taste of that during this one.
In part 2, when they're at dinner, and you have, Diane's husband and Rebecca masquerading as Sam's wife, I was like, oh, this is a little like the best episode. Maybe that's why people rated the finale as the best episode, because otherwise I'm not quite sure, other than nostalgia, why you would rate this as the best episode.
Tom, these 3 episodes, even viewed in one block, were terrible. I'm sorry.
I don't want to agree. But I think I have to. Okay, to argue against myself, the plot in Melville's with that 5-minute segment, that was really good, and it was, and in context, I did notice, like, it didn't feel as much of a punch to see Diane as it did back then. I actually watched this finale. I remember that. I had fallen off watching Cheers regularly, but I watched this and I was like, oh, look, it's Diane. She's back. It's amazing. We've missed her all these years. Having done the full experience, it's like, oh, we just saw her 2 episodes ago. It's not, it hasn't been that long, right? So that is one thing to consider. But that shtick felt like, it's because we had just seen her 2 episodes ago, they hadn't missed a beat. It wasn't like, oh, bringing Diane back wasn't such a great idea. No, it worked. It was good. I also will say that even though that last 15 minutes was all finale shtick, I got it and I enjoyed it in that respect. It wasn't a good episode to have them sitting around doing memories, but as a finale, you know what I mean? Like, I don't consider that a highly rated part of this episode because it wasn't great, but in the context of, like, this is our goodbye to Cheers, I liked it. I liked that everybody got to say a little something and they punctuated it with jokes. So I actually like that ending, even though I wouldn't rate it as a good plot. And that's all the nice things I have to say. Right there.
Well, I'm not going to bag all over it. However,
no, me either.
I will say that, and we've talked about this before, it's a miracle that anything ever gets produced in Hollywood. And if anything makes it to screen or air or whatever, it's a miracle. So being on the other side of that, I try to not be in the business of saying nasty things. However, I will say that there are some things that I can confidently announce, Tom, are not for me. And this trilogy of episodes that was all released as an hour-and-a-half long special was very clearly for people hungry in, I don't know, the early 90s, late 80s, whenever it was, for closure on a beloved institution. And boy, oh boy, does it show. To the sacrifice of, I don't know, comedy. I don't know. It just the second episode I thought was pretty good in that it reminded me of the best episode in the like a French farce, two people deceiving each other. But there was not a lot else there.
Yeah, the Rebecca plot was thin, and it was clearly meant to prop up Sam's story. Like they needed a reason to have Rebecca pretend to be Sam's wife, and have it be more depth than just Rebecca, please pretend to be my wife. Like they informed it with like, oh, she just tried to be someone else's wife, and that made it more interesting. That worked, but the actual plot to get us there was like, wait, you built it up like she had some problem saying yes, and then when he comes back, she immediately says yes. Like, I guess she didn't have a problem. Like it just turned on a dime. That plot was so thin. The airport shtick when they finally like get on board the TWA, and it was so draggy. It was so long.
And on top of that, it was such a break from the style guide. I don't believe they've done hallucinating people talking
I don't know
to them
how
before,
much they did play with that, but yeah. Woody being on the city council was also like, obviously them wrapping up a plot line. Right. And then having to continue to acknowledge it because, they played it for a laugh with Diane showed up and she's like, oh, right, you're doing that. And I'm the Queen of England. Except that's the joke I would make up when I couldn't think of a better joke. However, in this case, it's the joke they actually used in the show.
Yeah. There was also, Cheers has always been a cast of characters. It's been a nutty gang of scoundrels, and I don't know, this 90-minute exercise felt like 30 minutes of the end of preschool where somebody is pretending like they're acknowledging everybody, but really all they're doing is counting heads, and they're like, and you were there, and you were there.
Part one was merely an episode, and not a great episode, until Ditka showed up, and you're like, oh, okay, stunt casting for a finale. And then obviously Diane coming back. It's like, oh, okay, this is a big deal. Part two, like you said, was a decent episode. Like there was a good episode within there. And part three was just goodbye. It was just a long finale. I did really like the choice to have Norm be the last one in the bar with Sam. Because Norm is the first person you see in the bar. He's been there the whole time. He is the spirit of the patrons of the bar. And you could have done something schlocky with Diane. You could have done something with Rebecca because, she was the boss for a while. But I thought it was better to be like, yeah, the last guy to leave the bar is going to be Norm. And, they had a nice little touching and very, very subtle homage to Coach. That picture of Geronimo was Coach's, and he had talked about how he admired it. And I didn't think that was overdone. But again, all of that is sentimental. We're saying goodbye to Cheers. It's not. And if this had not been ranked so highly, I wouldn't probably even be hammering this. But I'm like, it was not a good episode outside of being a finale.
Well, and I understand why it would be highly rated in terms of affection and so on. But if you're going to rank it on affection, imagine if, like, the very first episode of Cheers was not filmed before a live studio audience, and you and I remarked on that. Yeah. And what if the last episode they broke? Like everything else was, but then what if the last episode did something strange and kind of mirror imaged Sam in a very real space, closer to the one camera shoots that we're accustomed to today. I don't know. I found myself very very taken with what might have been and very medium on what was. The first episode I thought was straight up stupid. The second episode was at least a vaudeville routine, and I don't know.
Yeah. I would like to call out the line from Kirstie Alley's Rebecca. I shoot for Donald Trump and I end up with Ed Norton.
What different times, different
That line
times.
played very different in 1991.
All right. So I guess on After Talk, we'll talk about what next we're going to do, or have we already picked it?
What did we pick? Did we pick it?
I don't think we have.
We should have, so that we could tell people about it right now.
Well, number one, ladies and gentlemen, please know that we're leaning into the full experience. And if you have a suggestion of a show that we should watch, the first, ultimate, least reviewed, and last, then please hit us up at cordkillers@gmail.com.
Oh, I remember. We actually talked about Twilight Zone. Do we want to call it?
I don't love it, but if we have,
well,
to
it was
pick
your
something-
suggestion, and you loved it last week, so you've already soured on it. Okay, that's a sign that it was not meant to be.
Well. Plus, also, it's like, do we include the movie? Do we include the?
No, just the original run of Twilight
first
Zone. There's no what ifs around it. You just do that 50s run. If you were to do it, but we don't have to.
We'll
Patrons?
talk about it on After Talk.
Patrons, you'll find out our decision on After Talk. Thank you, everyone. Patrons, of course, get After Talk. They also get Spoilerin time early, and we'll see you next time. Bye.